What's up, YouTube? It's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another episode of the NBA preview. Now, if you missed last episode, I'll make sure I put a link in the description, and also I'll pop up some annotations as well. But at the end of this video, there will be a playlist, so if you want to catch up and binge watch on the NBA preview in all of its entirety, you can do that as well. But in today's video, we have the New York Knicks, and my goodness, where do I begin? Because over the last year, the New York Knicks have been probably one of the busiest organizations. They have been in a massive overhaul of their roster and in their front office as well, and a lot of changes and new faces that we will be seeing for the organization this next upcoming season has a lot of answers that need to be asked before we move forward. But if I could possibly wrap up what the organization has done within the last 12 to 18 months, it could be something like this. This guy got overpaid, and then he got traded to the team, and the same guy who got traded claimed that he was on a super team, which made absolutely, positively no sense whatsoever.
Halfway.
Then the season started, the whole team started to disappoint. This guy right here wasn't getting enough touches. Then this guy right here, all of a sudden, he decided to just disappear out of nowhere and didn't tell anyone. And then after that, he sat there and said that, oh, he thinks he should be looking for a max contract during the offseason. Then this guy right here suffered from injury. This guy right here cheating on his wife. And then finally, this guy finally lost his job, and everybody was waiting for him to lose his job. So now you're caught up. But with all that being said, it actually didn't touch upon a very important part of the New York Knicks that I actually want to briefly talk about, and that is James Dolan, which brings us to our summer of social media for our clip of the day. Now, even though, yes, that James Dolan clip didn't necessarily happen during the summer, it's still something I do want to point out because it is something that will affect the New York Knicks moving forward. When it comes to New York Knicks, and I understand why fans, especially casual fans, like to point the fingers to coaches, general managers, and players, but when you're at a point where the team has been bad for 10, 15 plus years, so long that some of these players who are on the roster weren't even in the league when the team was bad, so long that you have to really start to question yourself, does it really have to do anything with the general manager or the owner itself? And when it comes to James Dolan, obviously his shenanigans with Charles Oakley last year definitely affected the organization in a negative light, so much so that you have certain current and ex-players voicing their displeasure of how the situation was handled. But when it comes to James Dolan, this is a reoccurring theme when it comes to these controversies. But if there is one thing I have to applaud James Dolan for, not really even applaud him, because Phil Jackson definitely wanted to get fired. He finally decided to fire Phil Jackson, brought in Scott Perry, and the one thing that's extremely frustrating, if I am Scott Perry, all of a sudden I have to clean up the mess from another general manager and my owner that I honestly shouldn't have to clean up at all. But unfortunately, Scott Perry has the task to try to make lemonade out of apples. Yes, I know, that's impossible. He pulled the trigger on trading Carmelo Anthony, which happened a couple days ago, and in return they received Doug McDermott and Enes Kanter. And we'll see how this is going to work out, because there are some bright sides when it comes to the New York Knicks, but there are also some negative as well. And with that being said, we might as well just transition to the contracts and the depth chart. Now, when it comes to the contracts, there's definitely been a lot of movement with this organization, especially from a team that is in the quote-unquote rebuilding phase, or at least this team should be rebuilding. The biggest contract that they signed over the offseason was Tim Hardaway, 4-year, $71 million contract, which is definitely shaky because Tim Hardaway was originally on the New York Knicks, but they decided to part ways, and he played with Atlanta over the past couple of seasons, and he really impressed, especially coming off the bench. And now he's back for the team, and many people make the argument that he's overpaid. I would as well, especially because, again, they could have kept him on the roster and he would have been just fine. And then after that, you have Ron Baker, Ramon Sessions, Michael Beasley, and also Jarrett Jack as well, so keep that in mind. Then when it comes to overpaid players, you have Joakim Noah, $17.7 million, which is ridiculous. Joakim Noah is getting paid the amount of money that some starting elite level centers are getting paid, and at this stage of his career, he obviously just isn't that anymore. And then when it comes to expiring contracts, obviously you have Michael Beasley, Ramon Sessions, because they just signed 1-year deals, but no major expiring contracts, which is a good thing because that means that they're more likely going to have a few years with some of the players on their rosters, so they can build up some continuity and some consistency with some of their players. So I do like that. So looking at the depth chart, there are some questionable things that I may have put on this, but let me explain. Ramon Session at the point guard position with Tim Hardaway filling up the backcourt. Then you had Doug McDermott at the 3, Porzingis at the 4, and then Enes Kanter at the 5. And then when it comes to the bench, I just decided to do a complete 10-man bench because, quite honestly, I really don't know how this rotation is going to pan out. Many people pointing at the point guard position, not necessarily knowing who's going to start. Let's get something clear. The rookie more likely is not going to, which is the reason why they decided to go after 2 point guards in the offseason with both Jarrett Jack and Ramon Sessions. So I really don't see Ntilikina getting that many minutes in the beginning of the season, but if he does continue to progress as a player, I definitely can see him kind of filling out that starting role and getting more minutes as time continues to progress. Then when it comes to the small forward position, many people may make the argument that Michael Beasley should be starting, especially because he came off a pretty productive season last year. However, keep in mind, Michael Beasley was more so productive because of the team that he was on. He provided them spacing, which is something that Doug McDermott can do as well. And quite honestly, when you're on a team without any star players, I really don't necessarily know how productive Michael Beasley may be, but it wouldn't throw me off too much if Michael Beasley does play some small forward, or even if they run the lineup with Michael Beasley at the power forward while Porzingis is at the 5. And speaking of the 5, Enes Kanter, Hernan Gomez, and then Joakim Noah. Joakim Noah will definitely receive some minutes, but how many minutes all depends on how healthy he is. But then when it comes to Hernan Gomez, he actually was a pretty solid contributor for the team when Joakim Noah was suffering injuries. But then when it comes to Enes Kanter, he's obviously the best player out of those 3, regardless of how poor of a defender he is. He's much more consistent when it comes to grabbing rebounds and scoring. And when it comes to this team, they're going to have to find some ways to win. And if that means putting more scoring power in the starting lineup, then so be it. Now, if I'm being positive about this team, offensively, there's a lot of potential when it comes to this roster. The problem with this team, though, is consistency and their defense. You're going to have someone who can consistently create their own shot to open up the floor for everyone else. And then on the defensive end, that's really where I'm just going to say it. This team is trash on defense. Now, with all that being said, I know there's plenty of people who are going to be in the comment section below who are going to sit there and ask me, well, you keep talking about a star player, and you keep talking about consistency offensively, and you keep talking about someone being a great defender. What about Porzingis? Which is the reason why he is our spotlight player of the day. Now, Porzingis is a unicorn, quite honestly. A 7'3" big man who runs pretty fluently on the floor, has some range to his game, can space the floor all the way to the 3, pretty athletic for his size, has a crazy wingspan, and has all the raw potential in the world to be one of the next greatest players in the NBA. The problem with that is, because over the last couple of years, especially because the offense has been so focused around Carmelo Anthony, I really don't know how much Porzingis has really and truly developed. A lot of people may point out the fact that Carmelo Anthony potentially may have even ruined the progression of Porzingis, but quite honestly, I don't necessarily think I would jump to those type of conclusions. But when it comes to Porzingis and his hopes to becoming a franchise-changing player, we need him to be not only a 20 to 25 point scorer, not only someone who can grab rebounds, not only someone who can protect the rim, but also a player that could win games. So this next upcoming season, I'm expecting Porzingis as an individual to give me 20 to 23 points on a night-to-night basis, and be able to give me somewhere to around 9 rebounds on a night-to-night basis, because I'm assuming that he's going to go out there and play 36 plus minutes every single game. Now, if he's able to do that, then I will be thoroughly convinced. But again, like I said before, when it comes to being a franchise-changing player, not only do you have to put up numbers, but eventually at some point you have to start winning games. And again, there are certain individual talents who are able to put the numbers, but they lack leadership, they lack consistency, they lack discipline, which is something that rubs off on other teammates, which is a huge reason why certain organizations are not as successful as they possibly should be. And I'm not saying that Porzingis is at that stage just yet for me to cast that type of judgment upon him, but there is a possibility that that could be Porzingis as well. So with that being said, I will be optimistic with his next upcoming season, but also keep in mind that there's no true metric out there that provides any evidence that shows that Porzingis is actually better without Carmelo Anthony. So just keep that in mind as well. But with that being said, that leads us to our Twitter question of the day. AJ Cruz asked, do you believe in Frank Ntilikina? So Frank Ntilikina, for people out there who don't know, is a rookie that the New York Knicks selected in his last draft class. He's a 6'5", 6'6" point guard who has a 7-foot wingspan. Don't tell no one, but it's actually unofficial, his wingspan. But even if it's a 6'10" or a 6'11" wingspan, it's still fairly impressive for his height and size. Now when it comes to the positive for Frank Ntilikina, his first step is really impressive. He finishes around the rim pretty well, especially for his 7-foot wingspan. He's a pretty solid passer, especially in the half-court setting, and that largely has to do with how patient he is, which is really impressive for a young player. And then on the defensive end, because of his physical tools, he uses those to his advantages to pick people pockets and also anticipate passing lanes. But then when it comes to his weaknesses, he just can't create his own shot, nor can he make a consistent shot even when it's spot up. And also, he played overseas. However, if there are two things I have to point out when it comes to Frank Ntilikina, is his body. I like the fact that he's 6'5", potentially even 6'6", with a 7-foot wingspan. And two, it's how patient he is in a half-court setting. If you watched him play, especially when it comes to passing out of pick and rolls and pick and pops, he seems like he was a bit ahead of his time in those regards, so I do like that. But in today's NBA, your inability to knock down a 3-ball or even just knock down a mid-range shot is something that will eventually bite you in the butt. But if I were to be positive about Frank Ntilikina, I think he's just as good as players such as De'Aaron Fox and even Dennis Smith Jr. When it comes to the New York Knicks, I like the 1-2 punch between Frank Ntilikina and Porzingis, or at least the potential that it has. And also I like some of the younger players on this team, potentially Doug McDermott and especially Willie Herman-Gomez. And also look out for Porzingis, because I don't necessarily believe he's going to progress as quickly as a lot of people expect him to. I think it's going to take around 2 to 3 more years for him to finally get to the point where he needs to be, largely because over the last 2 years, they've been focusing on Carmelo Anthony way too much. But with that being said, please let me know what you think about the New York Knicks in the comment section below. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be updated on the NBA preview. And tomorrow I'm going to try my hardest, I'm not going to make no promises, but I will try my hardest to double upload, because if D-Wade goes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, he tripping. But with all that being said, people, I will see you all later. Peace.